All right, hello. Welcome back to another video. I hope you're doing wonderfully. Today, I'm going to be talking about reference collection mostly. And this is going to be over top of some drawings of Jane Doe from Zenless and Zero that I did. This is kind of like an illustration, kind of like scrapbook-esque reference board. And I went with that because I thought it would be, I don't know, it was kind of inspired by Beelenor, who I follow on Instagram, where it's like a bunch of poses together on a single page, and it's just gives like a broader depiction of the character, I think, because it can be more expressive than just a single piece. And because there's multiple figures, you don't have to spend so much time doing like a super intricate detail on just one. So I'm going through my usual kind of drawing process here, where I start with basic anatomy, and then I'm going to do a little bit more structured, and then I'm going to do the costume and the faces and the details over top. I think this took me maybe 4 or 5 hours total. I did it all in one day, which I usually split it up, but I was just really in the groove and I had the day off work. So, all right, so references. I flashed them on the beginning of the video, which now that I'm going through and post, I'm going to make it so you can see them for longer so I can explain them at the point that I'm actually talking about them. I think reference collection is a huge part of illustrating, and it can be frequently overlooked. And I know for me, when I was first starting out, I thought like, oh, don't use reference. Reference is bad. You have to just figure it out from your own head. And that is not the way to go. When I'm doing characters, the first thing that I do is I come up with an idea. Every month before I do my like Patreon and character art outline, what I do is I pick the characters that I'm going to do for each of my drawings, and then I write like a line of text on a 3x5 note card, and that's what I use as my inspiration. So once I do that, I'll go through and I'll make my reference boards off Pinterest or Instagram and Twitter and like artists I follow, but also Life Reference. I use Life Reference quite a bit for poses, and Patreon, or excuse me, Pinterest is really great for that. So I'll go and I'll find like a couple pose examples that I want to use. I might not go exactly with it. I just want a gist that gives me an idea so I can make sure I'm not like terribly butchering anatomy and spending a bunch of time working on it when I could just be looking at a reference. It's just inefficient to try and come up with it all the time, unless you like are always practicing anatomy and know it super well and you can just invent it. But even if you're like me and you know anatomy pretty well, sometimes it's hard to come up with an idea for a pose. So a reference can be super useful there. And the next most important thing is, if you're doing fan art, have character references, have references of the character you're actually drawing, because those are pretty integral to properly representing the character. And I think it's nice to have the character from the original IP and all of the lots of fan art that other people have done of that character, so you can see other people's interpretations and how they stylize and how they make the character expressive. If it's a character from a game that you don't play and you're not like actually familiar with the character in the game itself or the show, then looking at the fan art can help give you an idea of the kind of personality the character has, and that can help you like inform you to pick your poses and whatnot. So reference the character first and then the poses. If you're inventing your own character, then the referencing the character is a lot broader, because you're going to want to have like inspirations, different ideas. So let's say you want to do a knight, you're going to want to have like different drawings of knights in the design language that you want to go with. maybe find some from a game or a TV show, or just some that people drew. And then you're going to draw on that. And you'll get to invent the personality of the character yourself, which is all super cool. So once you got those like first main things out of the way, you know the character you're going to draw. You have fan art of them. You have from the actual game, whether it's models or concept art. You can usually search on Google like concept art, this character, and you'll find some stuff, especially for League of Legends, which is super cool because I do a ton of League of Legends fan art. And then you found some poses that fit with that character, their personality, their energy. And then what? Well, I think a good thing to do is find an artist or two that you really like that have a similar style to you, and then pick a couple of their drawings and use them in your reference board to kind of inform how you're going to render or do line art. That can be really useful way to practice your own style and kind of improve it. Often when I'm doing my outline and I'm picking an artist or picking a subject to draw, I will also write down like an artist that I like, and to kind of show that I want to incorporate some of the way that they do things in that piece. Like Peroro, super cool rendering style, lots of textures in the painting. And I used that in an illustration I did on Patreon recently. So that kind of thing. Kind of picking some influences that you want to learn from and using them in your drawing so that you can practice and improve the ways that you want to, in the ways that you want to. If you saw in my reference board, it's only a few images, like 5 or 6 images. And I think that that is really crucial. When I was a younger artist, I would reference a lot heavier. I would just be surrounded by references to the point where I wouldn't even look at them. It was just overwhelming, and they didn't really inform my design or really influence the piece itself. I just kind of ended up doing it from my own head anyway. And that's kind of counterintuitive. That's defeats the whole purpose of using references. So if you're anything like that, you get overwhelmed by it, take your like gallery software on your computer and just open the images in that. And that way you're limited to how many you can fit on your screen because they can only get scaled down so small. So I just like make a little collage on my desktop screen with as many images as I can fit, and then take a screenshot of that. So if I leave the piece and come back to it, I don't have to set it all up again. And I just have like a file on my computer in all my like art references, and I have just a reference board file, and that's where they all are. And so I can super easily access them. I can look back at them and see old ideas that I had and what kind of style influences I had then, which is really cool. But like I said, having less images to look at is going to help you actually incorporate different bits of those images, and limiting them to your desktop screen like that really takes a lot of the like difficulty out of it, I guess. I'll usually start with like 15 photos that I actually want to use as reference, and then as I go to open them, I have to be more selective because I can't have all of them. They just won't fit on the screen. And if you'll notice in this reference, I don't really have character references in here. This is more illustration, like artist influence and poses. I'll have my character reference in a character reference board up on the other screen, which I think is a good idea because you just kind of need to glance at the character. And of course, if you're drawing the character, you're going to have to look at them. So the information that I'm spewing at you previously doesn't really apply, I don't think, when it comes to looking at references for the character. It's more for what you're being influenced by and how that's going to manifest itself in the final piece that you're trying to create. So I think that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to talk about with referencing. So So I guess I'll talk about the piece for a minute. And I took this Polaroid in the background idea from Bielenor's work. It's just kind of like a neat way to incorporate a couple smaller sketches without them detracting from the focal point. And I did pretty much just basic cell shading here, like 3 tones for each different color. And then I did a shadow over top of that with a multiply layer. And I guess that about wraps up the drawing itself. So let me plug my little advertising campaign, I guess. Well, if you like what you see here and you want to see more of my work, please consider checking me out on Patreon. Or if you want to commission me to do an illustration of a character you love, you can do so through my VJ. I'll have both of those linked down in the description. And if you're on any socials, I'm on Instagram and Twitter under Vesomnia, so you can see some more art from me there. All right, thank you so much for watching. And with that, I love you all. Please take care.